So, welcome to Grow. I'm going to talk about an exciting update we have. This is why you see this beautiful blockchain cow here. But first, here's the agenda for this slide. So, we are going to go today from seed to steward, a pathway of purpose. Remind all of you why you should be listening to me. And for anyone that is new here live or listening to this recording, who am I? And then we're going to dive a little bit into what is Grow and who is Grow, and then help you define that for yourself. And then what are blockchain NFTs and what are blockchain cow NFTs, as well as an incentive for all of us to go out and share that. So, for those of you that are new here, my name is Will Taylor. I was one of the original co founders of Grow, particularly Grow United, and bringing the idea of the blockchain together. When I was in college, my best friend in college roommate, he was a farmer. He's a third generation farmer out of Washington State. And as I went into the health space and really starting to understand how important food was for our bodies and for our own well being, he went home to the farm and he went in to understand how important it is to regenerate the soils, regenerate the atmosphere as we're raising animals and cattle. And so we came together and he asked for my help to aggregate ag data, all of the data that he had on the farm. How could he bring that in? And how could he start to show it? How could he show it to end consumers? How could he show it to the buyers of his crops and his animals to prove that his food was actually better and that as he was regenerating the soils, he was making better animals, making them happier, healthier, and more nutrient dense, ultimately for us as humans to eat them. And then as well as the crops, as he was rotating them, as he was building a symbiotic system with the animals and the crops, how was that nourishing the soil, which in a whole comes down to our mission to nourish the world. And that led us down a path of all of the problems that exist in that space today and how much distrust there is. And the way that I love to prove that distrust is I have everybody always just think about the food that you ate in the last week. And you think about that food and do you know where it came from? Do you know what's actually in it? Do you know what went into growing it? Do you know if maybe that piece of meat came from Australia, Brazil, or the farm down the street? Do you know the soil, what was actually happening that potato or that carrot or that piece of lettuce came from? And right now, I would bet that most of us have no idea. And I think 100 years ago we did. And I think 100 years ago we were actually healthier than we are. And I think one of those big reasons is because we've gotten to a place where we're part of an extraction community instead of really nourishing the things that we're doing. And I believe that the philosophies of the blockchain and what Grow was built on can really come out and change that. And so, what is Grow? Grow is a community that harnesses blockchain technology to nourish people, animals, and the planet. And so we have built our own base layer chain. We're not built on Ethereum or Polygon or Solana. We're truly our own base layer chain. And we've been very fortunate that we've been able to put in a lot of funding to be able to get to that place, to get to where we have our own base layer chain that is completely focused on this massive, massive industry of feeding the world, regenerating the soil, then making the earth the best place possible for us to live on and making us as humans the healthiest place that we can be. And so right now, when you look at what is Grow, some of the things that we're doing, and this is just a couple of them, is you have Grow United, which is the company that I work with every day. That includes our team. And so you saw Cindy and Neil, and we have many others who are working as a community to bring in people to the blockchain, to educate them on what we're doing, and then bring them in. We also have the Nourish Marketplace. If you go to thenourishmark.com right now, you can actually use Grow Token and have food shipped directly to your house in multiple continents across the world. And then we have Farm Tracer, which is our overarching traceability and transparency initiative to help bring transparency for good producers that are putting in their blood, sweat, and tears. How can they be rewarded for that and bring that to the chain? And so today I wanted to talk about some exciting things that we are doing to be able to make all of that happen. And it all comes down to anyone that's listening to this as an individual. And so we talked about who I am, what Grow is, but really who is Grow. And you are Grow. I am Grow. Grow is a community of cultivators. And as we talked about with some of our community members and our team, this is what the core is. If we are not cultivating on a daily basis, then nothing will grow. in fact, it dies. And so if we continue to use some farming analogies, if you plant a seed and you don't give it water, sunshine, it won't grow. It will die. And the actions that we take on a daily basis are what affect the growth of grow. And everything of grow, particularly on the blockchain side, is built off of proof of action, meaning the more positive actions that we take, the more exponential growth that we have. And so we thought of this badges and ways that we can actually track our actions that come down to blockchain products, which are NFTs. And so every single Grow community member will be getting a cultivator NFT in their wallet this week. And so you will get a drop. This is actually the first drop to every single Grow and a Grow account holder and wallet holder of the cultivator NFT. And what does that mean? And what should you think about? And I encourage all of you to take a minute this week as you get that NFT that sits in your wallet. It should be a badge and a remembrance that you are a part of this community, that you believe in one way or another that nourishing the world is something that's important. And I want you to think about, how can you help cultivate that mission? What actions can you take on a daily basis that help that grow? Because the more of us that do that, the more it will actually do it. And the beautiful piece about blockchain and today is that it is exponential in the rewards that we receive for the actions that we take. But if all of us sit back and we think about, I wonder what Will's going to do today. I wonder what another Grow community member is going to do. If we take this and we focus and we think about that, as we have these NFTs in our wallet, that you are a cultivator, I am a cultivator, and that means that I have to help nourish the world. And so, as a remembrance of that, every single person will be getting dropped a Grow Cultivator NFT inside of their wallet. As well as that, we've come up with badges for our community, ways that we can help track actions, that we can help see the growth inside of our community. And so right now, we also have, on top of being a cultivator, we have our 4 S's, and there's seed, sprout, sower, and steward. And so a seed, that's where everything begins. A seed becomes a sprout. And then a sower is someone that actually grows. They're working in the field every day. They're working with the animals every day. They're taking positive actions. And then a steward is someone in our mind who actually owns and operates the chain that we're running. So every Grow wallet holder will also have a seed NFT. A Sprout NFT will include a small version of a node. So 1/100th of a node. And as most of you know, and if you don't, we'll explain nodes here for a second. Nodes are what operate our blockchain. They're essentially our mining software. And so without software running a blockchain, that technology that creates the digital world doesn't actually run. And then sowers are going to be our NFT holders. So NFTs in our world are really just the products that our blockchain runs. How do we connect the digital world with real world assets? And so our badge levels, just to reiterate, you have your seed, your sprout, your sower, and your steward. And every single one of us will play different roles. We will only have, based on the code, 100,000 stewards. We can have millions of sowers, tens of millions of sprouts. And hopefully we get to the place where we have 1 billion seeds. Because unfortunately, as we know, not every seed becomes a sprout. Some will die, and that's okay. But the more seeds we have, the more sprouts we will grow, the more sowers we have that are truly cultivating the soil on a daily basis. And then we'll get to our 100,000 stewards over time. So I want to give some education today on what are blockchain NFTs and how do we look at them. And not to throw too much shade here, but I think if you look over the last 5 years, there's been some really silly use cases for NFTs. If you look at pictures of monkeys or bored apes that don't really do anything, you're essentially holding a JPEG image that can be worth $1 million today and nothing tomorrow, but it doesn't really connect to anything in the real world. And so our job with NFTs is to associate a real world asset with an NFT in a way that ensures trust, traceability, and on-chain utility. So we use NFTs in 2 ways, and both of them are having RWA. So we have a connection to real world assets. We also have real world actions. And so we look at our badge NFTs. If I go back to this slide, you notice that every single one of those NFTs are given based off of an action. So you had to take an action to be a Grow wallet holder or a Sprout node owner or an NFT holder or a smart node operator. So those are actions that can be taken in the real world, and then it's tracked and rewarded in a digital way on the blockchain. The other side of that, which we're going to go into now, is tracking real world assets. And so RWAs, if you're familiar with the blockchain space, it's one of the spaces that blockchain can be used in an incredible way. It's kind of the hot buzzword right now, but we have been doing this for years. And so all it is really is you take a real world asset, take a piece of land, take a cow, a cattle, a chicken, a cherry, a potato, and you're creating a digital representation via the data that goes into that asset, and then you're putting that on blockchain. So any asset that exists in the real world, you're creating an immutable blockchain digital asset that matches that real world asset. And so that is how we think about NFTs. It has to either be matched with a real world action or be matched with a real world asset. And so for a sower, for example, when you look at how do I hold real world assets into the blockchain and become a sower? So I want to start building in the digital world what's happening in the real world. And that brings us to the Blockchain Cow NFT. And so, what the Blockchain Cow NFT is it is the digital representation of a cow in the real world. And it's really important to understand that what we're doing is we're truly matching tradition with technology. And what I mean by tradition is what's happening in the real world and doing it in the best way that we know how based off of hundreds of years of learning and getting to a place now. But then we have to match that with technology, which is blockchain and AI. But both of those things have to exist. So the cow has to be born and exist in the real world. The same thing has to occur in the digital world. You have to have a container that exists on the blockchain that can then be attached to that real world asset, which we're going to use the cow for right now. So, where we are right now is we have created through our node network a blockchain cow NFT that can be tied to a real world cow. And so we've talked and we've mentioned in our community calls before that we have been in the alpha test with our partner farms, one of which has 700 cows born a month, another one of the largest suppliers of specific type of meat in the United States. And now we can start creating a decentralized supply of those digital blockchain cows so that they can be tied into real world assets. And I want to make another point here. I mentioned earlier, we're not a company, we are a decentralized blockchain. And so if we wanted to create blockchain assets to be tied to a real world asset, there's not a company that owns those blockchain assets. It actually is distributed through our node network and then through our node community and our community that can then buy those and hold them so that when our producers come in, they have digital representations and they can what we call the soul. So you have a digital container and then you have the soul. And the soul is the data of the real cow that can come in and be tied to the blockchain cow, which we now have. And so we're moving as a blockchain community from setting up our decentralized network with 25,000 nodes running all over the world. Now we're ready to start building on our decentralized network our supply of blockchain assets that can be tied to real world assets. And so within the next 45 days, we will be able to start seeing trading and launching the Blockchain Cow NFT, which will open up the world to more blockchain real world asset programs. And that includes chickens, anything that you can think of really in the ag space. We just talked a lot about chickens, apples, cherries. And when I originally got into this space, personally, we started with cows because that's where Austin and Royal Family Farming, but we started looking at milk and then cherries and then potatoes. And the way you track those is very different across assets, but we are almost through our alpha testing with our partners to be able to actually attach the souls of real world assets into blockchain cow NFTs, which is very, very, very exciting.